We are going to talk about data types in Java. Let's talk about those today's session. What are the various data types in Java? So, first we can go from the start and let's see various examples for the Java data types. As explained in the previous chapter, a variable in Java must be a specified data type. So yesterday we talked about the variables in Java, like int a equals to 10. A is a variable name and int is a data type and 10 is a value of the variable of int data type. So here int is a data type. There we can replace with float and string, and according to that we can change the variable names as well, like variable values as well. So here this one is a int my roll equals to 6. It's an integer, it's a whole number. It's a my roll is a variable name and int is a data type and 6 is a variable value of the int data type. And float, my float is a 7.999 and this one is a my float is a variable name and float is a data type, and for the float we need to indicate with the f. It's a floating point number. And char my letter equals to z. This is a character. Whenever we are representing any character, we need to put the single quotes. And a boolean, my boolean equals to true, and this is a boolean. Boolean means it will check it's a true or false for a given condition. Like it will check it's a true or false. It will return to us like a true or false. And string, my text name equals to hello hi. It's a hello hi means it's a string we are giving in the double quotes and the char is giving in the single quotes. So these are all the various examples for the data types. Data types are divided into two groups. One is a primitive data types and the other one is a non-primitive data types. So like we can write here, data types, and so one is a one is a primitive data types and the other one is the non-primitive data types. So data types are two: primitive data types and non-primitive data types. In primitive data types, what are there? One is a byte and short and int, long, float, double, boolean, and char. So these are the various primitive data types in Java. You can like this. So now you can get a good clarity about this. So primitive data types includes byte and short int and long int, and float, double float, and boolean and char. So these are all the primitive data types. In the non-primitive data types, we have as such as string and arrays and classes. So char is also is a letter, but it's a single quotes we need to put it. For the strings, we need to do with a single double quotes, and it will come into the non-primitive data types. And arrays is also non-primitive data types. and classes as well. So these are the primitive and non-primitive data types. In primitive data types, a primitive data type specifies the size and type of a variable values, and it has no additional methods. Primitive data type specifies the size and type of the variable values. It specifies the size and type of the variable values. Suppose we give the int a equals to 10. The data type is a int. If you give in the short int and if you give the long int, if you put to the float a equals to 10, you need to convert it to 10.0f. We already tell about the float will ends with the f. It has no additional methods. There are 8 primitive data types in Java. Byte 1 byte and stores whole numbers from 128 to 127. It will start the whole numbers from minus 128 to 127. It will store the values, and the short is 2 bytes, and this one it stores whole number from minus 32,768 to 32,767, short int. And int is a 4 bytes and stores whole numbers from this value to this value, and long is 8 bytes. So byte is a 1 byte, means 8 bits. Minus 128 to 120, where it start, generally it start with byte, and 1 byte equals to 8 bits. And short, next it will come for the short, and it's a 2 bytes, and next the middle int will come, it is a 4 bytes, and long it will come again 8 bytes. Same way int and float. Float is a 4 bytes and double is a 8 bytes. Like a long and double is 8 bytes. And boolean is a 1 bit, stores true or false values. And char is a 2 bytes like short. So stores a single character. Letters are for the ASCII values. Float means stores fractional numbers. It stores the whole numbers and it stores the whole fractional numbers. Sufficient for storing 6 to 7 decimal digits. Sufficient to store for the 15 decimal digits. You can store up to 15 decimal digits, and in float you can store up to 6 to 7 decimal digits. So first one is a byte, the next one is a short, and next one is a int, and next one is a long, and the other one is a float, and the other one is a double float, and the other one is a boolean, the next one is a char. So byte, every time it starts with a byte, it's called 8 bits and it's called 1 byte. And short is a 2 bytes, and int is a 4 bytes, and long is 8 bytes. Same way again repetitive. Float means in types of 4 bytes, and double means it is a long and 8 bytes, and the other one is a boolean is a 1 bit, and the char is a 2 bytes. So in this way we have a, like, what is a char is especially 2 bytes, store a single character or letter or ASCII values. ASCII values we can see the another chapter, what is the ASCII values and how the chars, like, how it represented with the chars in the Java language, everything we can go and we can discuss further later. The numbers. Primitive number types are divided into two groups. One is the integer types and floating point types. The one is the primitive number types. These are divided into two groups. Integer types stores whole numbers, positive or negative, without decimals. Valid types are byte, short, int, and long. Which are you should use depends upon the numeric value. Primitive data types are divided into two groups. One is the integer types and floating point. Integer types means what we said, whole numbers, and positive or negative, minus 127 to like minus 128 to positive 127, without decimals. Valid types are what is those integers: byte, short, long, and int. Which type it should use depends upon the numeric value. It depends upon the numeric value because it have a ranges, different type of ranges are there. Till the long, it's a whole number represents. And floating point numbers means it represents a fractional float containing one or more decimals. There are two types, float and double. So even though there are many numeric types in Java, the most used for numbers are int, for whole numbers. So in Java, generally the general practice, the most used for the numbers is the int and a double. Floating for the floats it's use the double. However, we will describe them as all you continue to read. Like we have a lot of types in a whole. For a whole numbers, what are those? Int and byte, short, long, those type of things are for the whole numbers. For the fraction numbers, what we have? Float and a double. But general practice for in Java, the most used for the whole number is an int, and the most used for the fraction number is a double. And here integer types. What are those integer types? Byte. The byte data type can store whole numbers from -128 to 127. This can be used instead of int or other integer type to save memory when you are certain that the value will be in the -128 to 127. Byte data type can store the whole numbers from 128 to 127, right? That the range is a 128 to 127. This can be used instead of int or other integer types to save memory when you are certain that the value within be -128 to 127. Instead of int, like when some, like you can save some memory, is a, like 128 to 127 byte, right? So for the int, how much is we can't, like sometimes this much of memory we no need to use for the, like if any number is a like the range between the 120 to 127, then we can save some memory. Then that time for 100, like that, we can use the byte my role. So like this we can use this byte in our Java byte data type. The other one, see, like this byte my role equals to 100. 100 is the value of the variable byte type, and my role is a variable, and byte is the data type. So we are printing the my number. And the short data type can store what the numbers with 32,000 to 32,767 range, and 5,000 if you put short my role equals to 5,000. And the int data type can store whole numbers this range too, like it's a lot of big number, 30 83,000 83,648 20114, like 48,000 83,000 48 lakhs and 4,700 lakh and 21, like it's suppose 214 lakhs to 214 lakhs in general. And in our tutorial, the int data type is a preferred data type when we create a variables with a numeric value. So we already said the int value is a general practice type for the our Java. Generally we use the most used data type is the int. And long, the long data type store the values this much to this month. This is used when int is lot large enough to store the value. Note that you should end with the value with an L. Here the large long, you need to put the L at the end. Whenever you use a float, you used to put the float, and double also it have something else. We'll discuss this later. So like this we can use it in floating point types. You should use a floating point whenever you need a number with a decimal. If we are using the decimal, then you are using like this 9.99 and like that. The float data type store the fractional values. This range to this range. Note that you should end with a value of the f. So this is the float data type. And double. Here see, it will also end with d at the last. The double data type can store the fractional values within this range. Note that you should end with the d. Use float or double. Which one is a good? The precision of a floating point value indicates how many digits the value can have after the decimal point. The precision of a floating point value indicates how many digits the value can have after the decimal point. After decimal point, how many values is there? How many digits are there? That is telling the precision of a floating point. The precision of a float is only 6 or 7 decimal digits. If you put the float here, it up to the 6 to 7 digits. For when double varies, precision about 15 digits. So you can put up to 15 digits in the double. So therefore it is safer to use double for the most calculations. So int and float and double are the most precision, like most useful for data types in the Java. And scientific numbers. Floating point number can also be a scientific numbers with an e to indicate the power of 10. So here float f1 equal to 35e3f. It's a scientific number that indicates the power of 10. Everything. Double d1 equals to that 12 is like is also power. It's a different. And boolean data type is declared with a boolean and it will take only the values is a true and false. Boolean is a Java fan is true, it stays to false. So whatever we assign the values true or false, it will print the true or false. Boolean values are mostly used for the conditional testing, which will you learn after the chapters. And character. The char data type is with the single character. The character must be surrounded by the single quotes. You already tell about that. The character must be into the single quotes. And alternatively, we can use the ASCII values to display certain characters. Char A equals 65, char B equal to 66, and char C equals to 67. System out println A and B and C. Like the characters ASCII values are there, we can print those values, the ASCII values. The list of ASCII values we can find in ASCII table difference. We can use this ASCII characters in further chapter. So the string data type is used to store a sequence of characters. These are single characters. If you like, you know, would like to print a like within the characters, then it will give the 65 and 66, 67 like the ASCII values. And this is a string is a data type and greeting is a variable name and hello world is a string value. So we are printing the greeting, then we will get the hello world. String type is so much used and integrated in Java that some call it the special ninth type. So this one is very special. So the all the Java is running on by the string mostly like you use data type in our Java language. String is actually non-primitive data type, but it refers to an object. The string object has a methods that use it to perform certain operations on the strings. Like you can get the objects later, and we will more things we can learn about the string and object later. String is a Java is actually non-primitive data type because it refers to an object. The string object has methods that are used to perform certain operations of strings. And non-primitive data types. Non-primitive data types are called reference types because they refer to objects. Like refer to objects, we already discussed about the objects. The main difference between primitive and non-primitive data types, what are those? Primitive types are predefined, already defined in Java. Non-primitive types are created by the programmer and it is not defined by the Java except for string. So already we discussed primitive types. What are those? Int, short, long, int, float, double. Those type of all things already predefined in Java. But non-primitive types except string, the remaining all the objects we need to create by ours. And non-primitive data types can be used to call methods to perform certain operations, while primitive types cannot. And yesterday we talked about the instance variables. Like we need to create an object for that. With that object, we call the methods. So they can be used to call the methods to perform some operations, but we can't use these primitive types cannot. And a primitive types has always value, while non-primitive types can be null. Primitive types, the int, short, long, and double, they have some values, like initially some zero like that. And non-primitive values, the string is not a zero. You need to put a null. So this type of the operation is also there. And primitive data types starts with the lowercase letters, while non-primitive types start with an uppercase letters. So int, byte, short, those are all start with the lowercase letters, and this one is string is start with the uppercase letters. And the size of the primitive type depends upon the data type. Non-primitive type to have the same size. So the size of the int and short and double, those are all the different, and but these have a same size. So one primitive data types are predefined in Java, but the non-primitive are not predefined, but we need to create. And With non-primitive, we can call the methods for perform some operations. For primitive, we can't do that. And the third one, it has some value, and it non-primitive values are the null. And the primitive data types start with the lowercase letters, and they start with uppercase letters. And the size of the primitive data types depends upon the data type, and the all size have the same size in non-primitive data types. So these are the different types of non-primitive data types in Java. So all class, hope we clear about this all the things. So these are the examples and two types, primitive and non-primitive. Primitive means byte, int, short, int, long, float, double, char. And in non-primitive, string, arrays and class. Up to this clear. And what are the various things? Byte means 1 byte, 8 bits. And short means 2 bytes. And int means 4 bytes. And long means 8 bytes. And float means 4 bytes. Long double means it is 8 bytes, and char means 2 bytes, and boolean 1 bit. So like this, it's differentially differentiated along those. And whenever we are representing double, you need to put the d at the end. If you put the long int, you need to put at the long int l. And if you like using the float, you need to you put the value, and ending you need to put the f. And mostly used data types in Java is the int and double. And double is for the like int, and the primitive data types for the whole numbers like int, long, and those are all for the floor, whole numbers. And in these floating numbers we can use a double and float. And for the char, they are using the ASCII values, and boolean is it only returns the true and false for the program. Like that, in strings, a lot of sequence of characters is a text, and this is surrounded by the double quotes. So it refers to Java is the non-primitive, but it because it refers to the object. It refers to the object. That's why it put it in the non-primitive. These are the differences for the non-primitive data types and primitive data types.